every point of view, it's a good answer. But the question is, how do you how do you operate in a budgeted environment in a matrix organization while maintaining your team's agility? So usually, and I would say 8 out of 10 times, or maybe 7 out of 10 times, this is the case. No company is fully agile where they don't plan, uh, they don't spend, they don't plan cost before they start doing delivery, especially at annual level, because you still operate in an environment where you are serving the stakeholders and you want to maximize your profits. So usually in an organization, the way it would happen is that at the beginning of the year, there'd be leadership that would allocate budgets to initiatives. The allocated budgets go to department heads, and the department heads start figuring out how can we make these initiatives deliverable in these budgets. At that point of time, you as a scrum master sometimes will be part of those conversations, in the sense that, getting an understanding. Your program manager might tell you that, okay, for this initiative this year, we need to do these things, and your team, and so would there'd be other scrum masters, you need to do these things. Now, you basically need to understand that, will your team be able to deliver those initiatives? Now, the assumption is that the budget is funding your team throughout the initiative, which usually would be the entire year. But the calculation required is that how much effort is required to be delivered to such things. Sometimes you might be asked upfront, and those are toll gate conversations, right? So the way that happens is that you would have a first toll gate review, maybe around March, April, where your leadership is going to say, we need to deliver feature one, and by the next 3 days, tell us what is going to be the cost. The expectation is that you are not going to go deep diving in the cost. You're just going to come ahead and say that, you know what, this is going to be the cost. Now, you obviously have a high level assumption. We call it the three amigos. You get your maybe architects, you get your tech lead, you maybe get your quality analyst and say, guys, this is the feature that we need to build this year. Uh, what do you think? How much will be our cost for development, analysis, testing, and then release? And then you apply PERT that we have discussed. You apply PERT, and whatever your team is giving you, you go back by with those numbers with a plus minus 100 usually, right? So that the cost is going to be around $1.1 million plus minus 100%, which means that in the given time, you wanted a cost, I'm giving you the cost, but it could be 1 million, it could even be 2 million, or it could be lesser than a million. Then the leadership is going to discuss, they're going to be like, okay, this makes kind of sense. So I want you to go ahead and do a deep dive and do some research and let us know exactly how much this might be. Uh, Maybe take 2 weeks or something like that. And here is 10% funds, or in a way they allocate that out of that budget. 10% is getting away because now the team is going to get involved into deep research. Now you start working with the architects, you start understanding the requirements a little better, you start creating architecture diagrams, you rule out some assumptions you may have made initially, and now you try to double click on that initial estimate and capture little more details, that to deliver this feature we need to deliver this to deliver this is the cost, this is the cost, this is the cost. Again, you go back to the leadership. Okay, here is the revised cost. It's going to be $1.2 million plus minus 50%, which means the 1.2 could become 1.8. It could become 800. Now they'll be like, okay, great. All right. Now they're going to take a decision that, you know what, we should move ahead with this. So let's do a final assessment, come up with a detailed plan and start the work. So now again, they again ask you to go back. You and the other team members will again come together. Now this time you'll involve, so far you have been doing three amigo, now you're going to involve your development team as well. And you're going to be like, first, you will obviously make sure that the requirements are clear and things like those. And then you get your development team involved and you break down the task a little more detailed, not very detailed, but a little more detailed. And the reason you're doing getting your development team involved is not because you want their time to be blocked by doing a thorough detailed analysis, but it is more because they need to be aware of the work that needs to be done so that if they have any assumptions or concerns, they can voice it out right away. And then based on that, you will finally create a quote, an estimate. It will tell the total cost, it will tell the milestones, and by when this entire feature will be delivered. And it will then, you will then also list all the assumptions, assuming that our X legacy code is integrated and works with this. Because if we have to build a new code base, it might take more time, whatever. So you come up with your 10, 15 assumptions, and then you go back to leadership again with the final cost, the assumptions, and the cost is now it is a plus minus 10%, so it never goes to 100%. It is a plus minus 10%. So you'll be like, okay, now the cost after everything is still 1.2 million, but the assumption, the variance is plus minus 10%. Very important to do PERT, because PERT adds a default extra padding in your estimate, because you're doing a best worst likely times 4 divided by 7. You will get by default extra buffer, and now you start building in an agile way. And as those requirements keep on refining, your team keeps on building. But usually this format works. Your team is able to be predictable enough to still deliver. But the assumptions become very important, because that is where you put all the high variable issues that can happen. And if because of any of that assumption failing, something changes, now you again go back to leadership saying, hey, we assumed this, but now this is the case. And this is not what we planned for. This is going to be additional. Right. So
Okay.
that's the flow that you usually end up justifying everything with.
Okay. Makes sense. So, can I ask you, like, can you frame an answer for me? Like,
I mean, so let's say you ask this question, we'll be like, yeah, that's a good question. As a matter of fact, I'm still to work for an organization where we don't do such a practice. But usually, the way we do it is I am a part of those planning discussions, at which point we go through a bunch of tollgate reviews, tollgate plannings, where we go ahead and come up with our cost estimates. We usually do it in 3 rounds with a plus minus 100, plus minus 50, and a plus minus 10. And I'm a big fan of PERT, so I use PERT to come up with my estimation so that I have some buffer and some wiggle room in my plan. And using that plan, we then put it to we develop, and we build the solution. And at each milestone, we are doing the toll gate review so that the leadership is aware that the funds that are allocated are being consumed and we are hitting those milestones. And if there is a risk, because obviously, because we are doing yearly planning, one of the biggest elements that I consider is assumptions. I capture all of them. I try to make sure my team has all these assumptions listed out. So if any of those assumptions end up being, false, then obviously the plan changes, and I make sure I call it out to the leadership, let them know, link it to our initial conversations so that they're not surprised, and then we pivot from there.